My name is Heidi Swapp, and I live in Utah. And I was born and raised in Utah, but I've lived all over the world. I've been married for over 20 years, and together we have 5 children. It's not super easy to sum up what I do, what my business is, but I am a creative. I've always been a memory keeper, so it started out as scrapbooking, and it's really evolved into memory keeping products and also creative products that help you create memorable experiences and then document them and keep them. So photos, photo journaling, all that kind of stuff is very much within the realm of my business. So I am the creative director. I design products and they're sold throughout the world. Probably like most people, I never thought that suicide would touch my life at all. I have 5 very active and happy, busy kids, and suicide came into our life and affected my second son. So I have 5 children, 2 sons, 2 daughters, and then another son. And so when my son was 16 years old, the summer after his sophomore year, he took his life. Cory had been struggling for quite some time. And I think, there's no generalization that you can make about suicide. And I think that if anything that I've learned, it's that there's no way to say people who take their own lives I don't know that you can pack them all up into a tidy definition. And I also think that a lot of different circumstances and experiences and influences come into that. For Cory, we noticed some real changes that were happening in him, especially about 18 months to 2 years before this happened. Specifically, especially that last 18 months. We noticed changes that now looking back seem more obvious, but at the time it just felt like, he was 15 years old, he was a freshman in school, he was struggling, his grades were plummeting, and his apathy for school and his apathy for things that he used to love was increasing. And, I took this as I had to be, more disciplined. I took this as he was being lazy, or he wasn't living up to the standards or the expectations that we had. And I started then also to reach out to school administrators and to healthcare professionals. And he was diagnosed with depression and anxiety, very high scores. But it seemed to come and go. We had times when he seemed just fine, and then times when he seemed just not the Cory that we knew. I think that as he started to make these changes, and healthcare professionals were saying to us, well, he's going through puberty, or this is a typical time, and these are typical changes. And so I assumed that it was. And then we did start getting him more help. And even alongside this, the time that we were getting him this help, there was never a point that I really thought that suicide was even in going on in his mind. There was never a time that he expressed that to myself or my husband. There was never a time that he expressed that to his counselor. And so even though I knew he was sad and he was frustrated, and that he didn't feel good enough, and that he didn't feel, he would tell me that he felt like he was a disappointment. And it didn't matter what we did to reassure him. That's how he felt. Once it happened, when it happened, obviously I sat there. It just so happened that my husband and my oldest son were out of town. And so that first night when Cory was actually on life support in the hospital, and we had this time, and I just thought, I can't believe that this is my story, that this is his story, because it just didn't line up with what I had always imagined. And what happens, I was just so shocked and surprised. In fact, I had even been with Cory at the counselor just under an hour before it took place. And I can remember leaving that counseling appointment, calling my husband and saying, I think he's going to be okay. And I still don't know what happened in that last 45 minutes. I don't know what went wrong. I don't know. And you think about that a lot. You think about those questions. And then everything rolls into a massive question of, well, what was he thinking, and what could I have done, and how did I not know, and how did we arrive at this point? And I think very early after it happened, my husband and I looked at each other and said, number one, we're not going to blame each other. And we're not going to blame ourselves. And we're not going to dwell on what we don't know. What we're going to do is focus on what we do know. And what we know is that we love Cory, that we did everything that we had in our power, and everything that we could think of, and everything that we were counseled, and if there was something that we could have done, we would have. And there came a point, and I think that even after now it's been just over a year, that we've kind of come to that point where we're like, Cory got to use his agency, but that's not the end of his story. And we can sit and dwell and focus on all the questions and all the unknowns, but that's never going to help. It's never going to bring comfort. It's never going to allow peace. And so I've really decided to focus what I do know. And what I do know is that the atoning sacrifice of the Savior is for Cory too. And it will save Cory from all the things that he couldn't that he couldn't work out in his mind for whatever reason. It doesn't matter what the reason is. It doesn't matter what the unanswered questions are. The atonement just engulfs all of that. And the atonement also is there for me and for our family. And it is big enough to give us the peace and comfort and I think that was one of the things that we decided as a family and as a couple, that that we would allow there to be unknowns, and that we would embrace the Savior, knowing that his love for Cory is perfect and that it's enough. Because of my business, I have always shared my story, my family. And that's always been, scrapbooking. That's what you talk about, your family. And I have been an avid scrapbooker from the time that Cory was born. In fact, my very first scrapbooking class I taught when I was pregnant with Cory. So 16 years. And I had been very, very open. I'd been in magazine articles, I'd written books, I had a very active blog that people followed, and I had a very significant fan base that knew my kids. They knew what they did, they knew what we did, where we went, where we liked to vacation, all these things. And as I sat there, thinking about, how do I tell this story? And I knew that I had a choice. And I decided that I owed it to the people who have always supported me, who know my family, to tell them the story. And it was really hard, because I really did feel like a failure as a mom. I mean, I felt horrible. But this was a real story. It was really happening. I hadn't talked about the struggle that Cory was having. I mean, he was a teenage boy. The photos that I shared, what people saw from the outside, was just a very handsome, fun kid. I mean, he seriously is the best. And I felt like the only way I could tell the story was to just be extremely open and vulnerable. I was meeting, as a family, as a couple with Cory, we were meeting with a counselor. And he was teaching us about being vulnerable and being open, and teaching us that when we're vulnerable and we're open, then people can make connections with us. And one of the things that Cory struggled with was making connections. And that can lead to a lot of isolation, especially when something's wrong. You don't want to tell people, you feel ashamed, you are afraid. But when you open up and when you're vulnerable, then it allows people to come in and support and to connect. And we can also connect through really difficult things. And I needed the support. I needed people to know about my love for him, about that Cory He didn't do something wrong. I mean, I didn't want people to think, I didn't want people to construct their own reality for what really happened. I wanted to just tell the story. And what happened was amazing. I was overwhelmed with people that were sharing their story with me, that were coming to me with their experience with depression or their experience with a suicide in a family member. And also people feeling so much love and concern and giving us prayers, people from all faiths, from all over the globe. And we could literally feel those prayers. We literally, I know that I was sustained by the prayers of people that connected with our story. And so as far as the stigma, God, no mom wants that to be their story. No wife, no girlfriend, no big brother wants that to be their story. But it is real, and it is happening, and I honestly don't think that there's anybody that can say that they never thought about that they've never had a day that they just thought, I am not doing this for one more minute, or a week, or months, or strung into a year that you just feel like, I can't keep going on. There's nobody who hasn't had that feeling. That thought crosses every mind and every heart, because this life is staying hard. And I don't think that you have to look a certain way or have a certain problem or be in a certain situation. And I guess that's where the stigma comes in. If you look at my son, super good looking kid. This kid had a million friends and was loved by all. And that's why the stigma doesn't work. The way that we can help, prevent, avoid, draw awareness is by being open. Being open about those who do suffer from depression or those thoughts. And maybe they've gotten past it to the point where they can say, you know what, I really struggled and this is what helped me. Or, we all have those people that were like, I can't believe you would ever have those feelings, because you are just, you are so awesome and so great. And I can't believe that you would have struggled in that way. Those kinds of stories help people. I kind of sat and thought, here's my family, and we're a happy family, and we do fun things together, and we love each other. How did this happen in my family? How did this happen? And I guess that's why I feel like it's so important for me to be open about it, because nobody is immune, and it's real. And right now I don't know if there's anything I could have done to prevent it. I certainly tried to do what I could, but definitely knowing more, knowing how to talk to somebody, I still don't know.